Back with another video, and today we've got another requested video, the iPhone 13 versus the S23. Which phone do you get here in 2024, this late 2024? What's interesting about this comparison is that these are around the same price. You can get an S23 for around that $370, $380 mark, but the iPhone is actually right there with it, and this is in the used refurbished marketplace as well too. So you can get an iPhone 13 for around that same price as well too. Alright, so it's pretty interesting to see how these compare. So let's look at the hardware. They're both about the same size here as well, as you guys can see. Yeah, definitely about the same size, and they both feel pretty comfortable in the hand. These are kind of one-handable. They're not necessarily compact phones. Now, you do have a matte finish on the S23 versus the glossy back on the iPhone 13, which again, it still looks pretty good. You can see fingerprints on this one at an angle, so this is why I really like, you know, a matte finish, because you can't see the fingerprints at all. And then what you'll notice here is you actually do have 3 cameras instead of 2 cameras, which we will talk about. Both phones are IP68 dust and water resistant, and overall I think both phones feel great in the hand and they look pretty good here. Alright guys, let's talk about the displays here. So very nice displays on both of these phones here. So the S23 has a 6.1 inch display, and it is a dynamic AMOLED. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1750 nits peak brightness. It's 1080p 425 for the PPI. The iPhone 13 also has a 6.1 inch display. It does have HDR10, and you also have 1200 nits peak brightness. It's 1170 by 2532 resolution, so it does have a slightly higher resolution than the S23 here. And then you also do have 460 for the PPI. So again, you do have slightly better resolution and overall higher PPI on the iPhone 13. Both displays look pretty good. They look very clear. One of the things that you will really like about the S23 is that it does a much better job in direct sunlight as opposed to the iPhone. It does a okay job, but not as good as the S23. You can see it much better. And then also the notch does look, you know, outdated compared to the S23's punch hole. Overall, I found that the viewing experience on the S23 is overall better. As far as the overall screens themselves, Samsung does go for a more colorful look on the, you know, S23 here. Some people don't like it. It really depends. A lot of people say it's not the natural look if you're like I guess a photo editor or something like that. So it just depends. I do like the more colorful look, especially when you're gaming or watching content. I just think it looks really cool. Now the biggest thing here is it's not even that. It's not the higher you know, max brightness or the punch hole. It's the 120 Hz versus the 60 Hz. Apple still has a 60 Hz panel on the iPhone 16, so you can definitely feel the difference when you're scrolling. And like I said, if you're into iPhones, you probably don't care, but you can definitely feel the difference. It almost feels, I don't want to say laggy, but compared to 120 Hz, it just doesn't feel anywhere near as smooth. I think that's the biggest thing you'll notice. So I think the S23 has a much better display. Let's talk about the chips. We are running iOS 18. We have the Apple A15 chip, 128 gigs of internal storage, 4 gigs of RAM. Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 on here, 128 gigs, 8 gigs of RAM on the S23. And we're running Android 14, iOS 18 here. And what's interesting about the overall speed here is that, yes, you do get a faster score on the iPhone 13. But because of the 120 Hz, the S23 I think is overall going to feel faster if you were to put them side by side and use them in real life and actually just beat it there in Subway Surf. It's going to feel much faster because of the 120 Hz when you're doing stuff like scrolling and just pretty much doing anything. So I would say they both open and animation wise pretty much the same. It's not like a gigantic difference. But again, I would say, like, if you're just scrolling through Instagram and stuff like that, then you'll definitely notice a difference. Let's go ahead and launch PUBG. Boom. Yeah, guys. So also one thing that I wanted to mention here, because the iPhone is limited to 4 gigs of RAM, the S23 does have the Galaxy AI stuff, and you will get no Galaxy AI, not Galaxy AI, but you will get no Apple Intelligence features on the iPhone 13, which is unfortunate. Start. So as you guys can see, pretty fast. Now, again, here is the downside to Apple going with a 60 hertz panel. And I'm going to repeat it again. They have a 60 hertz panel even on the iPhone 16. So what's going on here is it limits the gaming performance. So you can see we're on 120 hertz on the S23, or 120 frames, and it's much smoother. So if you're a competitive gamer, you play a lot of shooting games, the gaming experience, in my opinion, is much better. It just looks overall better. You can see you can play at, only HDR Extreme on here, and it kind of sucks that they limited the display for so long, and they're still doing it. So I would say overall performance, I would actually give it to the S23. I think in the real world, you'll feel the difference between a 60 hertz panel versus a 120 hertz panel. You'll feel it in gaming performance as well too. I don't have any type of heating problems with the S23 or the iPhone. I'm not a hardcore gamer or anything like that. But yeah, overall performance, I actually think the S23 just feels a lot more modern, I guess, in 2024. Speakers at max volume. Let's go ahead and we'll start with the 13. Yeah, I definitely give it to the iPhone 13. It does have the louder speaker for sure, and the bass hits way harder. Yeah, the S23 doesn't sound bad by any means. It's not as loud as the 13. So I think overall loudness and bass is just much better on the 13. You can definitely hear that the 808s hitting a little bit harder here for sure. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the biometrics. So the biometrics are pretty much what you always known on the iPhone. You have face unlock, which is very secure and it works fine. I do like having the two methods to get into your phone here. So you have the fingerprint scanner and you have the face unlock on the S23. Alright, so this is where a lot of people are going to make their decision, is the cameras here. So which phone has the better camera here? Now, the S23 has a 50 megapixel standard, a 10 megapixel telephoto with 3 times optical that can go all the way up to 30 times zoom. You also have 8K 24 and 30 video and a 12 megapixel selfie that can shoot in 4K 60. The iPhone 13 has a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. There is no telephoto lens here and it can shoot in 4K 60. You also have a 12 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60 here. Check out these side-by-side stills. Let me know what you guys think. And this one I think goes up to 5 times zoom here, but it's going to be digital, of course. Now let's talk about the overall battery performance here. I actually don't have an issue with the battery life on either of these phones. As a lighter user, I'm really impressed with the S23's performance here. The iPhone 13, I have actually really good battery health on here. I think it's actually still perfect. One of the things you can do to maintain really good battery health is to charge your device to 80%. It has helped me a lot. I was able to maintain 100% on a lot of my phones. But yeah, so battery life is pretty good on both of these phones. They both don't have really, massive batteries for the most part. You do have a bigger battery on the S23 at 3900 versus the basically 3200 milliamp hour battery on the 13. And also the charging specs, you do have slightly faster charging as well in the S23 at 25 watts. You do have wireless and reverse wireless charging. And of course the iPhone does have the wireless MagSafe charging at 15 watts. And then, your standard wireless charging. So battery life is not that bad on the 13. I can kind of get through the day with the 13 too. And you can definitely get through the day with the S23. It's very impressive. So let me know what you guys think about the comparison, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.